All right, we are a little late, but we are nonetheless live. Episode 2 of the Spin Cycle. I am Andrew Southwick. He is R.C.
Mhm.
Williams of Watchmen Action. You can also find us on Culture Crossroads. That airs every Sunday evening, 5 p.m. Central Time. BeckTV.plus. You can also find clips, goodies, segments at our YouTube Culture Crossroads at Culture Crossroads 316. I know there's a lot of different show names, but the Spin Cycle is just this. It's some extra content every day where we respond, we react to some of the headlines and try to bring the truth, not the narrative, but the truth. What can we confirm? What is not confirmed? What is hype? What is spin? We want to get rid of all that stuff and then hopefully cut through the noise. You can do what you want with the information, but the point is you have clear and true information. So, RC, man, it's been a long time. It's been, I don't know, a little more than 24 hours. Are you
It's
okay?
it's like it was yesterday.
It's almost like, yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. Oh my
and
goodness.
Andrew doing great. I was just thinking about yesterday's episode 1. And by the way, the show also airs at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on weeknights on the brand new Watchmen Action Network. That's channel 40. On the Epic cable system in North Dakota, soon coming to Roku TV, Tubi TV, Pluto TV, and all those other TVs as well. So now the Spin Cycle has a slot on TV just like that.
There you go. We're growing by the minute every day. We appreciate the new channel subscribers from yesterday,
Yes.
and there have been several across our different platforms. We appreciate those checking out the shorts, checking out, taking their time to spend some time with us, and we certainly appreciate it. So let's get into this. What I think are some of the headlines today. And RC, you brought this up, of course. There is this cyclospora parasite that has infected our produce and is causing what is popularly described as explosive diarrhea. As of the CDC's latest report, July 9th, 843 laboratory confirmed domestically acquired cases, 86 hospitalizations, no reported deaths, cases reported across 31 states, more than 1,500 additional cases awaiting analysis and classification. And illness onsets ranged from May 1st through July 5th. And the CDC expects the numbers to rise due to reporting lag, and illness onset can sometimes be delayed by 6 weeks, I guess. I don't know how they're figuring that out. But apparently, obviously, some of the recent numbers in the headlines have been 3,000 sickened, 4,000 sickened. We're seeing reports of perhaps the epicenter in Michigan, maybe with lettuce, so on and so forth. But I don't think really anybody knows. As of July 14, 3,309 cases as of July 14th. That is, what is today? Is this the 15th? So, no, that's of today. I don't even know
That's up
what day
today.
it is. Let me tell you. That's going on. And apparently, there's only 40 or 50 cases in a typical year. Um, that doesn't necessarily mean anybody's hiding cases. It's weird. I just think there's a lot of lag in reporting. There are some questions about this, though, and why it's taken so long. For example, why has there not been a recall of anything? Normally, when there is any kind of food contamination, we know right away what product it is. Stores pull it off the shelves. We're all instructed to go check our fridges and pantries and look at the expiration dates or the serial numbers or whatever QR numbers they might have, identifying numbers, so that we can identify those products and get them out of the house. But apparently, this is just a drip, drip, drip that's going to go on and on and on. RC, what are you seeing on your end?
Andrew, my concern around this is what it always is when it has to do with the CDC. I mean, we went through this with COVID, where there's either lag time or it's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. My concern, Andrew, some of the stories I've heard around the fertilizer on the lettuce and other things that have been affected, that there's a human component to that. And there have been stories floating around. We've covered some of them and ripped from the headlines that human waste is being used as fertilizer in addition to animal waste, which traditionally that's how fertilizer starts. But the human element is something that keeps coming up. I don't know that they're directly correlated, but it is strange to me how these things happen, right? And you go from 50 or so cases a year into the thousands. I think getting to the root of what happened there is important. And right now, it's almost like so much of the product has been moved that they can't tell you, hey, go in your fridge and throw it out. Because, Andrew, honestly, I don't think that they know everything that's been impacted. I think there's going to be more to this than we know. And the best they can tell you is basically cook your vegetables. Um, I
What what we're hearing as to how the this parasite gets on food, at least in past years, it's through like fecal contaminated water that's sprayed on the crops, and then that goes to the store. So, for example, if it's on lettuce, one of the ways um, the Wizards of Smart are telling us to protect ourselves or to prevent the illness is to peel off the first few layers of lettuce to get those outer layers off, and then wash it as normal. The more difficult foods are things like raspberries, or uncooked broccoli, cauliflower, that have a lot of nooks and crannies where the
right.
parasite can get in and hide. The let's see, Michigan investigators say the available evidence indicates that lettuce or salad greens may be a potential source, but they have not identified a specific type of lettuce or green, a particular brand. There's no grower, there's no distributor, there's no supplier, there's no processing plant. And other foods have not been ruled out either. This, according to Michigan.gov. Yeah, so it is curious, and it's curious as to the widespread nature of it as well. But I'm not saying curious as in necessarily conspiracy theory, and they're all trying to kill us, but it is curious.
It is, Andrew, and I think we see this in a couple of different areas. It exposes some of the fundamental weaknesses of our system and our structure. And given the things that have happened over the years, that when you look back at them, you say, wow, how much gross incompetence played a part in this. I mean, I think we learned that from 2020 beyond. There was an agenda, obviously, but we had such gross incompetence at so many levels that you think to yourself, man, it's a good thing that it wasn't mass fatality because we'd all be dead.
Mm.
Just on a slightly lighter note, they say, hey, peel back the first layer. Look, man, in this economy, most people can't afford to peel off that layer and just throw it away, right? Stuff's
Well,
expensive, including lettuce. Like,
you
come
need one
on,
of
man.
those, again, not to make light of serious situations, but this struck me as funny this morning. The first story that I read about this had to do with Taco Bell removing lettuce from their products,
Yes.
and I mean the amount of jokes about how Taco Bell already has a long history with human digestive issues.
Yes.
It's, what struck me as especially hilarious. No offense, Taco Bell, we've all eaten there, we get it, but it's not like they're unfamiliar with
I
that
mean, it
type of thing.
is, yeah, that is kind of a thing with Taco Bell. I mean, you could change the name of it to ED, explosive diarrhea. Taco Bell, please don't sue me. But I mean, yeah, it has a long storied history. It's interesting that they said, let's pull the fresh ingredients and yeah, so we don't catch a buzz saw. But Andrew, I think obviously people, you want to pay attention to these things, and it's hard to tell at this point. It's always when people ask me about, oh, are you worried about said contaminant or anything else? And I'm like, listen, here's the challenge. By the time you figure it out, by the time you find out what's going on, it's already made its way around the world. Anything can get around the world in a day or less at this point. And, I think being conscious of it is important. But I think we also have an accountability thing. We talked about this a little bit yesterday with governance and even with the CDC and some of our other agencies, whether it's at the federal level or the state equivalents. We have to be paying attention. And I think that as we talk about what's going on with Lindsey Graham and some of the other stuff here with Iran, um, the vigilance that's necessary in a self-governing society is really starting to show itself at this point. And people complain about those who represent them. I think you have to ask the hard question: how'd they get there? They got there because we weren't vigilant. People say big money interests and everything. Look, I get that, but again, it goes back to vigilance. How does that big money get in? We did a piece on Byron Donalds and his stock trades late last week. And if you follow the money that's even financed him and you get to the Club for Growth, I mean, follow the money, right? You've basically got 4 or 5 people who control potentially a large outcome in a gubernatorial election for one of the largest states in the country. Our level of vigilance is important here. If too many people are watching, people won't try to get away with things. It's like the old adage, an armed society is a polite society. This is no different. If a lot of people are paying attention, people are much less inclined to do things that they shouldn't be doing or try to pull a fast one. And I think people need to be reminded of that, even in this instance, because my questions obviously go to the CDC. But within the state of Michigan, I want to know where that contaminated water is coming from, who's in charge of that. And without completely tightening my tinfoil hat, I would ask people to take a correlation and look at what happened with the LA fires. When we finally started to figure out who was in charge of things and you got one look at them, you knew exactly why there were so many problems. We end up with some of the strangest and most incompetent people many times in these roles because they generally don't have a high level impact until something bad happens. And then you figure out the person who runs these things has absolutely no clue or any experience in the area that they work in. Not saying this is the case, but it's certainly worth looking into.
Yeah, we got to move to the next story, but I do want to say, well, I don't want to say anything because I lost my thoughts. So we're moving right along. Potential Lindsey Graham conspiracy here.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know this, but this. Okay, so this is this has been going around. It's a viral post. I've seen some of it on X, some of it on Facebook, that claims that former CIA analyst Larry Johnson has said that Senator Lindsey Graham could not have returned from Ukraine in time to suffer his medical emergency at his Washington home Saturday evening. The posts, I'm summing them up, but effectively they say the Ukraine trip plus return journey makes an 8:30 p.m. arrival impossible, and then presents the assertion that Pentagon insiders know the truth, that Lindsey Graham died in Kiev, and the cover story is already exposed by simple schedules. Let's see, Johnson made the allegation during an online interview on YouTube entitled Lindsey Graham Died in Ukraine and U.S. Covered It Up. But on balance, there are no other documents, no name Pentagon, Pentagon sources, flight records, witness testimony, anything like that. What is confirmed, we do know that the Graham was publicly photographed and recorded in Kiev on Friday, July 10th, meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky, they talked about air defense requirements. They talked about sanctions on purchasers of Russian oil. They talked about continued American support from Ukraine. And Graham's office also issued a July 10th announcement that he and other senators had reached an agreement with the Trump administration to advance legislation targeting purchasers of Russian oil and natural gas. So, but this comes down to a timeline now that we don't really know. There's evidence that places Lindsey Graham in Washington. There's Fox Carolina published photographs showing emergency personnel delivering him to George Washington University on late Saturday night. District of Columbia, DC's fire and EMS radio traffic reportedly recorded the first emergency dispatch to Graham's Washington residence shortly after 8 p.m., and that was for the cardiac arrest. Apparently there was a telephone call minutes before Graham became ill. So we really don't have anything that would tell us there's a cover-up going on. However, what remains legitimately unanswered is Graham's precise departure time from Kiev, his ground route out of Ukraine, the airport from which he flew, what kind of plane was he traveling on? Was it government, military, chartered, that kind of thing? We don't know exactly when he got to Washington. We don't have the full 911 call and EMS chronology. We don't have the reason the FBI remained involved after the preliminary medical finding, and we don't have the final medical examiner's report and toxicology. That would provide really a complete and independently verifiable timeline. So all we have really is, an assertion that someone is covering this up that's going viral, but that is what we can verify. That's what we can verify. So if you're seeing these bounce around the internet, if there's some there, that will show up. But right now we don't have that.
Andrew, I mean, I at first I thought he was traveling with President Trump on Air Force One, but obviously that wasn't the case. So okay, fine. Like, is there a conspiracy? Are they trying to cover up the fact that he died in Ukraine? I mean, look, the fact remains, as best we can tell, the guy's actually dead. Okay. And his sister has already been appointed to take his seat. I guess for the sake of closing the loop, yeah, sure. And if he did in the event die in Ukraine, why would the US government feel the need to cover that up? Fine. I think following up on what I said yesterday, though, these are the distractions that concern me when we have bigger fish to fry. And anytime I hear something like this, the first thing I do is I look at other parts of the news cycle or the spin cycle to figure out what's trying to be slid by while people are distracted. We lost a sitting senator. There's a process for that where I said today the flag outside is at half mast. I can appreciate that, right? Didn't particularly agree with Lindsey Graham on most of his positions, and that's fine too. He's passed on. Okay, great. And his seats, he's already had someone appointed to his seat for the remainder of his term, and there is a process. I don't know that rehashing this does anything else except suck people down a rabbit hole. And interestingly enough, we're seeing a lot of that with conservative media right now in general. It's like all these rabbit holes that just distract you on things where it's like, that should have been solved a long time ago. Why is it all of a sudden relevant? What are you distracting me from? And our audience, Andrew, whether it's Culture Crossroads, Watchman Brief, or even now the Spin Cycle, you guys look beyond the spin and figure out what's going on. Eventually, we'll figure it out, but it's
And
not
with these
important.
rabbit holes, yeah, we talk, and again, if anybody, checks out our, Culture Crossroads or Watchman Action, we do get into things that are in some cases are conspiracies,
Yeah.
but it's really pattern recognition and also an understanding, a spiritual understanding of human nature and our tendencies are bent towards evil and doing destructive things. And so we just look at that and say, listen, if it's like watching a wave come in from the shore. You can see it all the way out, in the ocean, and you can say, hey, that's going to keep approaching the shore and it's going to land about right here. You can see the water line oftentimes, from the on the sand. It's the same thing. It's much different than putting up, an assertion and then not providing anything to back that up at all. And as you're talking about, that then becomes a distraction because now we dig further into unfortunately, our tribalism camps, and we end up, majoring on the minors quite a bit.
Yeah. I encourage people, don't fall for the shiny object syndrome. Don't do it.
All right. Well, let's move from that to has America done its job in Iran? What? This is a legitimate question.
No, I know it is. I'm just.
In a Breitbart clip, Republican Kansas Senator Roger Marshall argues that Iran's military and nuclear capabilities have weakened enough that regional government should assume responsibility for what comes next. What Marshall claimed effectively was that the United States has, quote, defanged Iran, unquote, that Iran is unlikely to obtain a nuclear weapon in the immediate future, which President Trump, by the way, said that the nuclear dust or whatever the minerals are that are underground are so far underground that only America has the tools to get them out. Now, that was also a claim that was made a year ago as well, but I digress. Marshall goes on to claim that Gulf nations now have a responsibility to finish the job, quote unquote. The Gulf countries should be prepared to deploy their own ground troops, and that American soldiers should not lead a ground invasion or occupation. And Marshall did say, and direct quote, we've done our job. Have we done our job? What is our job? We were told that we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. They didn't have one before. We were told that it was underground and we decimated all their materials and all their ability to make a weapon. Then we had to go in to make sure they didn't have a nuclear weapon. And then for months it was, we've got a deal, we don't have a deal, we've got a deal, we don't have a deal. Memorandum of understanding that lasts for about 4 seconds, not even enough time for the ink to dry. And now we're back on again, and now we're hearing that we've done our job and they don't have a weapon. President Trump also said the same thing in a press conference last week. But we don't. What's the end game here? What are we doing? If it's nuclear, if they're not supposed to have a nuclear weapon, haven't we now accomplished that goal?
Boy, where do I even start here? So let me start with a bit of levity. Let's have a little fun. It's almost like we have a coordinator to coordinate the coordinating that reports to the director of coordination, who reports to the chief coordinating officer, which is why it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. So I mean, this is obviously littered with problems. And let me go back to something I said at CPAC this year in Dallas that made for the fastest we have to go to break on Steve Bannon's War Room, probably in the history of the show. I said at that time, with regard to the Iran war, Trump is fighting a two-front war. The first one, well, not a war, I'm sorry, an engagement, whatever they're calling it now, is he's got the battle that's in front of him, okay, that's happening in Iran. But he's also got the court of public opinion. And Americans' appetite for conflict is limited because we have problems internally that we need to deal with, which is why the day that I was on War Room, or we were supposed to be on, they preempted with the cabinet meeting because I said President Trump is trying to get out in front of whatever's about to happen next. The other thing I said at that point is that you have to take a boxing analogy to heart here. If you are in the ring with a bum, you need to knock him out in the first round. If you let a bum hang with you in the ring, they will hurt you. So what's happened? You let a bum hang around in the ring with you. Now you're into the 12th or 13th round and you're still trying to put them away. But now they're encouraged because they haven't been stomped out yet. If you're going to do the thing, you got to do it. Final point, Andrew, about the senator's comment about Gulf countries going in and doing it. Steve asked me this question on the show. He said, why won't the Arabs fight? I said, because that's what they pay us to do. Right? The Saudis, the whole deal for oil in the Middle East is predicated on the U.S. providing protection. Will these Middle Eastern countries eventually do something? They probably should, and Saudi Arabia has already said that they would contribute or participate in that process. But that's a tough road to hoe when Big Daddy's in the mix and he's supposed to be handling business, and then you look and say, well, wait a minute. The deal for us taking payment for oil in U.S. dollars is predicated on the U.S. being security and kind of being the mob muscle to make sure things stay in order. Andrew, it's like the song that will drive you insane. It just won't stop, and you want it to.
It's important to be clear that the United States has not actually concluded its military role. CENTCOM said American forces, this according to Reuters, American forces completed another 5-hour wave of strikes against targets in Bushehr, Chabar, Jask, Konarak, Abu Musa, and Bandar Abbas. The operation marked the third consecutive night of renewed U.S. attacks. According to the AP, the strikes targeted coastal defense systems, missile installations, drone sites, and Iranian maritime capabilities, with the stated objective of reducing Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping and regional targets. And now, of course, the war has shifted to the Strait of Hormuz. The central battlefield is no longer limited to Iran's nuclear facilities. It's become increasingly a war over the control of the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump saying, I believe it was yesterday, that we intend to set up shop in the Strait of Hormuz and charge fees for people to go through it in the midst of Iran attacking ships that are coming through that strait. We're worrying about freedom of commercial navigation, again, through the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian oil exports, Gulf state security, and the cost of protecting international shipping. And again, a reminder, the Strait of Hormuz normally carries roughly 1/5 of the globally traded crude oil and natural gas. And so Iran's ability to threaten or attack shipping remains one of Tehran's strongest forms of leverage. RC, when this started, there wasn't any tolls or anything like that going through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, obviously, that has shifted. You have to think that part of that is because I think the Trump administration knows not just domestic oil prices and gas, but also I think part of the global economy and certainly America's economy is not exactly as strong as they might like people to believe, and they can't allow. Now we're in it so deep, we can't allow the Strait of Hormuz to go haywire and sideways, especially coming out of, if we're trying to come out of this thing looking like we are winning.
Andrew, to take a line from the world famous Gordon Gekko in the classic movie Wall Street, I am up to my backside in more nuts than a fruitcake right now. Just being honest. it feels like Abbott and Costello. Who's on first? Like, this goes back like our prior story when we were talking about what's going on with the outbreak, right? I ask myself hard questions. The best and the brightest, in particular, when it comes to our military and our capabilities, we are the strongest, most powerful military in the world. How does an operation that has this many moving parts but has a very clear and distinct purpose not get executed nearly flawlessly by the most powerful military apparatus in the history of the world? So I have to start there. And then I ask myself, if that doesn't happen, how can we not, being as advanced as we are, go and fix those problems and get this thing done? Let me explain to everyone simply. This is what happens when you're not looking for a landmine in a field full of landmines and you step on one. Guys, look, and this is us kind of spin cycle. This is a lot of what happens off the air that you don't see on the TV shows. Until we are willing to call a spade and ask these hard questions very practically and actually keep asking until we get an answer, you will have a perpetual battle in Iran that will mirror Afghanistan or the Iran-Iraq war, or take your pick, right? And I think what people underestimate, and listen, I'm not a fan of Iran or what they do or the theocracy of the government. I'm not, so please don't take it that way. But you have to understand that the ideology that exists here is empowered when they can take what they deem the great Satan and keep them in perpetual battle. If you're going to knock a bum out, knock him out. If you're not, don't fight.
Well, here's the other thing that I would add too. I think that we're underestimating against Iran. You mentioned, they want to take out the great Satan. They want to take out the little Satan. But they also, the Islam belief, they want to bring about the 12th Imam, and they believe to hasten the 12th. And if you look at how they describe the 12th Imam, it's effectively, they took that from how the Bible describes the Antichrist, and they want to bring this 12th Imam and hasten the coming of the 12th Imam. I think one of the things that we may be underestimating, at least it looks like from our perspective, is honestly the spiritual aspect of this. This is not just about making a deal to survive to the next day, which I believe is where Trump comes from. I think where we've underestimated the Middle East, even to Bush 43, is their spiritual belief and conviction in what they're doing. And if you don't meet that with an equal spiritual conviction into what you're doing and an objective to come away with, and by the way, go back, other than maybe Desert Storm and at least the pretense of after 9/11, weapons of mass destruction, when have we had since World War II an actual, this is what we're going in to do, and here's our objective, and here's what we're going to do. And listen, if you want to know more about that, YouTube channel, Culture Crossroads 316, go through some of the former videos there. I did a breakdown of the war powers since World War II. We have not ever, Congress has constitutionally is the one that declares war. We have not had an official declaration of war since World War II, which means every war we've been in, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iran, Afghanistan, none of it has been actually constitutionally started. And that matters because now President Trump has formally informed Congress that hostilities resumed on July 7th, and the administration maintains that this means it's a new 60-day period under the War Powers Resolution. So what that means is if a president effectively goes to war, he's got 60 days to bring it before Congress to get a resolution.
Right.
Well, what happened is that MOU came at the 60-day mark, and all of a sudden we have a ceasefire, except it wasn't a ceasefire. And now we're starting again to start the clock over. I'm not an Iran apologist in any stretch of form. Their government is evil. Their regime is evil. They should be wiped off the face of the earth. I absolutely agree. I don't know why we don't go to Congress and get that declared and do this right. And it should have been. And I think we have the firepower and the strength. And if we would muster the will, which I don't know that we have, to win, I think we could have done it probably in a couple of weeks, as Trump boasted early on. But now what it looks like is we're going through loopholes to keep this thing going for reasons I don't think that are yet clear, because the objective seems to shift as we go, and the objective seems to shift in ways that are like we're cleaning up the mess that we're making along the way and then pretending that our cleanup is the goal every time a new mess. Does that make sense? Every time we have a new mess that comes out. And again, I'm not. Hi, Evelyn. Good to see you. We see you in the chat there on YouTube. Thanks for checking us out for a few minutes. Again, this is not I don't support our troops. I don't support, crying out loud. But we have to be able to look at things honestly and objectively and just say, and we should be allowed, and we are, in fact, as we the people, allowed to ask these questions and say, look, it looks like you went in here for reasons, I don't know what. You decided it was going to be to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, which previously you had said that we destroyed them anyway. So why is that? We go back and forth on whether or not we have a deal or don't have a deal. We finally get some kind of deal in place that isn't a real deal, that probably, if I'm going to look at this, and if I'm going to look at that MOU in history, it looks like that was a stopgap, an excuse to be able to restart the 60-day clock, because we weren't going to go to Congress and get a declaration of war officially, which means we really don't have an effective objective that we can say, hey, this is what we're doing, here's what we're going to do, and this is what you look for when the signs of victory. It was keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Now they're all saying they can't get a nuclear weapon, but now we've got to clean up on aisle 7, the Strait of Hormuz, which is a mess that was collateral damage from doing this in the first place. I'm sorry that I went long on there, but that's, I don't know. Help me understand.
No, I'm with you. And I think I can speak for both of us in talking about how we feel about members of the military, soldiers, right? To the point where we are so convicted and so behind the people who volunteer, by the way. In the U.S., military service is not mandatory. You volunteered to do that. We are so behind them that we want them to all be home safe. That's how behind them we are, okay? Just following this logically. You don't want to put someone in harm's way unless it's absolutely necessary. And, to your point, Andrew, about the cleanup on aisle 7, how much resource drain does this become? And what's the competence level of the people running these things? No disrespect, because I'm not a military person. I did not serve. But I have to ask the hard question, right? Because I'm a citizen of the nation, and I have a right to do so because, in part, I'm financing what's going on there. And it is okay for me or for you or for anyone watching this or anyone who will ever watch this to ask those questions and demand answers from the people you send to represent you, Andrew. That's the answer.
Some uncertainties remain. We're a little bit over time. We're going to wrap up here. And our friend Billy Elliott from yesterday did mention we need to cover Conor McGregor and whether or not he was injured. We're going to have to save that for maybe tomorrow because we're up on time here. But some uncertainties in Iran that remain. How much enriched material has survived in terms of nuclear material? Did Iran disperse equipment or personnel before the attack? Were they hiding stuff? I mean, that was one of the big theories when George W. Bush went into Iraq was, well, that, Saddam moved everything. Mm-hmm. Are there any undeclared or underground facilities? Now, if you hear the Trump administration, then at least the posture they're sending in the media is the answer is no, that we've obliterated everything. And the only nation that can reach any of their materials would be America, because we're the only ones that has the tools to go that far underground. Is Iran able to rebuild parts of the program still? For example, that was one of the criticisms of the MOU was we unfroze $300 billion. Of course, they're going to rebuild their program with that. We know this. But can they? After this round of attacks, does the increasing military pressure make Tehran more determined to develop another deterrent at some point? And then who's going to inspect and verify any future agreement? Even Marshall himself acknowledged that reports that Iran is attempting to rebuild. That from Breitbart. So at best, maybe the nuclear threat has been delayed, but it's hard to say that because we keep hearing that we've decimated it all. And then, well, if we've done that, then again, you go back to what are we doing? It's so upside down. I don't know, man. I don't know. I know that, hardcore MAGA is going to say, hey, it's 3D chess, it's 5D chess, it's whatever it is. But at some point, we need some clarity and some straight answers, because this affects the world. It affects every one of us as Americans. It affects everyone in that region. And, we have our sons and daughters and brothers and sisters engaged in this battle. Some of them lost their lives, a few of them earlier in this war. We need to know what we're doing. We need to identify the objective, and then we need to execute it. I believe we can. I'm just not sure we know what it is.
Andrew, if you are not willing to hold the people who represent your interests accountable, they will represent their own interests, and you get what you deserve. I want that to stick with everybody, because that's an important point here as to why all of this is happening. That does require you to do the work and ask hard questions. I'm not mocking anybody watching this. What I'm saying is you actually need to put in the effort to see things change. And if you're not asking questions, nothing's going to change, because that's translated to the people who are doing this, that they can just continue to do whatever they want. And as our good friend Bill Federer says, silence equals consent.
Well, with that, RC, we better wrap it up right here. We'll be back with you tomorrow. RC, do we know what time? I know you're on site, so it's more up to you than me.
Yeah, I think we'll probably just do the 12:45, 1 o'clock area. I think that's working good for us.
All right, 12:45, 1 o'clock, late lunchtime. You can spend it with us here on the Spin Cycle again. We are not looking at the narrative. We're not looking at the spin. We're not even looking at political bias as much as we can help it. Yes, we are politically conservative. Yes, we believe in Jesus Christ, and so that is our worldview. But we just want to look at the facts. What are they? What are we dealing with? And help equip you with those same facts. So thank you for being with us. Again, our other channels, let me put them back up here on our stream. They're going to come at you. They're not really separated very well, but I can't do anything about that right now. But YouTube, you can find at Culture Crossroads 316. Lots of goodies there at Culture Crossroads 316. You can find me on Facebook, The Culture Crossroads with Andrew Southwick, as well as Andrew Southwick Official. We encourage you to like or follow the pages or whatever it is you do over there. Subscribe on the YouTube channels, and also for RCs as well. And Watchman Action, find that on YouTube, find that on Facebook. Like and subscribe there. And of course, our main programs, Watchman Brief, you can find that, and Culture Crossroads every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central on BeckTV.plus, and the Watchman Action Network, which is available on the Epic Cable, Epic Cable, and you can get it. Yeah, I think you can download that too on Roku as well. So lots of places to find us, lots of content. This is a ship that is just leaving port. We are growing, and so again, thanks for spending some time with us. As always, leave your comments, what you think, your thoughts about our thoughts in the comment sections wherever you are. We're happy to read them. Do try to keep it civil. Do try to keep it family friendly. But we appreciate you being with us. So, RC, anything that I forgot in that last little bit?
No, you covered it all, my friend. All things Watchman Action at watchmanaction.org as well.
All right. We'll see you next time.